and welcome back to the Mystic Parlor Podcast. I'm Evelyn Zuel, and today I have a guest, Laura Lawlor, who is a wonderful friend, first and foremost, but also is someone that I've collaborated with doing sound baths. She's a talented sound healer, co-host of the Take Me to Your Dealer podcast. On her podcast, she dives deep into aliens, UFOs, government cover-ups, and other paranormal topics. She's a lover of all things weird and hopes to make contact herself one day. So welcome to the parlor, Laura.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure.
Yes, so full disclosure, we are friends.
No pun intended.
In real life. And most of our hangouts end in conversations of UFOs, aliens, and shitty things that the government does.
Right. I would say 9 times out of 10, when we're, in a social setting, we usually are the ones that kind of veer off and, talk ad nauseum about all this stuff, and everyone else is kind of like off doing their own thing.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Do you guys want to talk about something else?
Right.
now?
No. We got to keep going. We got to figure it out.
Did you hear? So it's going to be fun today. We're going to talk about all of the alien disclosure that's been going on because we are in the wildest times right now. Yes. This is the time to be alive, folks. So if you're on the verge, just wait because there's so much disclosure happening that you don't want to miss.
Right.
There are programs being unveiled, UFO crashes that are coming to surface. And we're going to talk about all of the stuff that's been popping on the media and the mainstream culture with regards to aliens, secrets revealed. And then also I'm going to just jump in here and there with some astrological insights into that because the timeline for these things coming out is very synchronistic with the cosmic shifts.
Seems to be on purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool.
So tell me, Laura, about your fascination, your history a bit, your podcast as well.
Yeah, cool. So I've always been interested in UFOs, aliens. Like as a kid, like I wasn't playing with Barbies and stuff. I was like playing with little green men and like army figures. Kind of like pretending that there were like alien crashes happening and like the army was coming. Like I knew about all this stuff. Like as a kid, it always was like super interesting to me. And then, just kind of in the past few years, it's just become more of an obsession, especially with all of this disclosure stuff and, the government kind of being a little bit more transparent, quote unquote. I will kind of reserve total belief that they're truly being transparent until basically I see an alien with my own eyes because I don't know what their whole goal is, but we can get into that a little bit later. And so my friend Talia and I, so Talia's my co-host for Take Me to Your Dealer, we just decided that this, needed to be talked about. I know we're not, the only ones talking about it, but I think the more voices, especially the more like female voices that talk about this are just super important. There's really not a ton of women discussing this topic. So I think that, that's definitely important to, women can be fucking nerds too, man. So.
Are we swearing today?
Are we swearing today?
I guess we are.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm you'll listen to my podcast. You'll see I am very used to that.
So not safe for work.
I'll try to curb that a bit.
We're classy here on the Mystic Parlor.
Yeah, not classy on Take Me to Your Dealer.
JK. What is the main thing going on right now? What's the hot button item?
Yeah. So it's getting pretty intense. So I guess we'll just start with the most recent thing that's been happening that's been, on everybody's radar here is this whistleblower named David Grusch. So his story is really interesting. He kind of came out of nowhere, but he's a former Air Force officer. He was working in intelligence for over a decade. He just recently, like within the past few weeks, has come out with, all of this information about how there's a secret UFO or UAP or NHI. I don't know. They're changing terms every day. It's hard to keep up. There's a secret program that is being illegally withheld from Congress. That is basically, they are responsible for retrieving these vehicles that crash, these unidentified vehicles that are of non-human origin. They've been retrieving these and basically trying to reverse engineer the technology so that we can use it for our own gain. So whether that's for war and whether it's for, anything else that we can think of, basically, we're working very hard to figure out this tech, basically, and we've been keeping it a secret from, like, the main bodies of the government. So even, like, you'd think, like, the government is like this all-encompassed thing, like everybody's in on the secrets. Not true. Like, there's secrets within secrets within secrets. It's like a Russian doll. Like, it's so deep, and there's so many layers.
And so many people will ask, like, how is that possible to keep such a huge secret from the public and from other government officials?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's on a need-to-know basis. And look, I mean, we all know, like, the government is not past silencing people for good, if there's too many questions asked. Like, it's pretty scary. It can get scary. And I think the goal of secrecy is above all else. However, that seems to be changing in recent years. We've gotten way more information, way more people have felt comfortable coming forward, and there's just been undeniable proof and evidence that has come out. So they're just finding it harder and harder to keep it under wraps. So this is kind of the biggest thing, though, that's come out, is that, yes, there is a program, and it's 100% illegal to have these programs that are being funded. Basically, the program is being funded under the guise of something else. I'm not sure exactly what they're, like, claiming they need the funding for, but according to David Grusch, it is not for what they're saying it is. It's for a UFO retrieval program. So this is a big deal, and it's a problem. And the House Oversight Committee, they're meeting about it. They're planning on having a hearing about it, and they've basically put in place, there's going to be punishment. So if people that are working on this program, people that have any knowledge of this program, if they don't come forward within, like, I think a month or two, then all funding is halted, and there's going to be real repercussions for it. So, yeah, they're not screwing around.
When are they going to have that hearing?
So there's not an exact date yet, but they're planning it right now. So as of right now, I know that there's not an exact date, but it is going to happen. Like, everybody's very interested who works, in the House Oversight Committee, and, people in Congress. Like, they're very interested in this. Like, they want to know where their money's going. It's very important, and then, like,
because didn't they just do an audit, like, on the military? Well, Bernie just presented a bill to audit the military spending for the first time ever.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
So I'm curious if these will all of these things will come to a head, in the next couple of months, and sort of in parallel ways prove each other, or like just create a story or a plot line that is more credible for the people to understand, of, like, oh yeah, well, there's what we just found so conveniently, $63 billion that was sent to Ukraine that was not accounted for.
Right. Yeah.
Like, how do you just lose $63 billion?
Oh, well, we've lost billions before. Yeah, I don't know how deep you want to get, but or how much we want to digress. But yeah, we have definitely.
Well, you got time.
Yeah, we have lost billions before, conveniently right before 9/11. So
true.
It's it's not. We don't. we can't put that past us to do that. And yeah, what's interesting about this particular thing, though, is that there has been acknowledgement of a program. It's called ATIP. It's like the Advanced Aeronautical. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but that's essentially like an investigation task force into UAPs and UFOs and, non-human intelligence. So that was headed by this man, Lou Elizondo. And so he's come forward. He's very vocal about the program and its activities, and it's no longer operational. But I think that maybe that was allowed to come forward to kind of like mask what is beneath the surface, what this guy, David Grusch, is talking about. Oh. It's like way deeper. It's way possibly more sinister. So I think that, that was kind of like a distraction, a diversion. Like, hey, look over here. Yes, we do have a task force that's looking at stuff, but it's, it's not that serious. Like we just, it's just like little investigations into like, Farmer Joe calling about like a crop circle or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's advanced aerospace threat identification.
Right. Okay. There you go. Yep.
Which sounds more extreme than,
yeah.
What is it? Aero is the other one, isn't it? The other organization that Grusch is talking about, which is the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office.
Okay.
Oh, that's where they retrieve the anomalies.
That's what it's actually called. Okay.
So like, there's actual programs already that are set up to identify and investigate anomalous objects.
Right, yeah.
And NASA has been slowly filtering out some videos here and there of Air Force coming into contact with unidentified flying objects, and it's just like a trickle down effect. Mm-hmm. But
Grusch says that those videos that came out, a couple years ago from all of those like Navy and like Air Force pilots and stuff, like that's just tip of the iceberg. Like the stuff that he's seen apparently is like way crazier, way scarier. Like he says that there's crafts that are, huge, like inconceivably huge, like like mothership type crafts and things like
we've
that.
We've heard of, was the more famous one in the like early 2000s in Arizona, or was it late 90s in Arizona? They like the whole town saw.
Oh, are you talking about the Phoenix Lights?
Yeah. The Phoenix Lights. That one was as large as a football field,
right? Yes,
they say, and that's like you can't even fathom what that would feel like, or the experience inside of your body to see a football field sized flying object over your head.
So scary. Yeah. And there's another story from one of these Navy pilots of kind of hovering above the water. They were doing some kind of like reconnaissance mission, and there's a pilot above, and then there's like a team below, like in a submarine or something, like kind of going under the water, and he had to radio in because he saw some kind of craft like slowly rise up out of the water, like breach, and it was like, he's just said it was like huge, like indescribably huge, and it was coming like right for the submarine, and then it just like as quickly as it came up, it like started to go back down. So that is just so scary to me. Like if I needed any more reason to not go into the ocean,
well, the ocean aliens, that's a whole other
realm. No, that's my favorite.
But first, why do we believe David Grusch?
Yeah, it is very difficult with these people that come out. Just a few examples like Bob Lazar.
Is he vindicated?
I think he is because David Grusch is talking about what Bob Lazar was talking about back in, the 80s and the 90s. Like this reverse engineering of craft, the secret programs, the doing anything that they can to silence people that, want to come forward. Bob Lazar, it's just so unfair, his story, just to go into that a little bit for people that don't know. He claims to have worked basically in Area 51, and he did research on some of these crafts that were recovered, and he was working on doing the reverse engineering. He went to MIT, but now when you look into him, his entire record is scrubbed. So it's like, it just shows that he never he didn't go to MIT, he didn't work, for NASA or like any of this stuff. And so they just do what they can to like, they might not kill you, but they will kill you. They'll kill your identity, basically, if you say too much.
And so to piggyback off of that, because I did an MK Ultra episode, but also there's still more to be said about that. But in that, there's in the list of goals or agendas for the MK Ultra program one of them was to discredit people and disgrace their name, essentially.
Yes, it's like canceling. Government was doing canceling way before the modern man. So
the queens of cancels.
Yeah, they definitely started it all. Yeah. No, it's a technique that they've, mastered for sure. And, but I do think that the more that comes out, the more people that come forward, the more Bob Lazar and other people that came out, in the past, are vindicated. So, yeah, with David Grusch, just why we believe him. I mean, he is a high-ranking official and he has a lot to lose. It's like these people, they're not just, again, like these hillbilly, like farmer guys or like whatever that like drank too much in a field and they like are
still partly credible.
Hey, whatever, why not? I don't, it's their truth. Who cares? But like, yeah, no, I mean, he has a lot to lose basically. So him coming forward with this is very, very important. He also, he did this initial interview with News Nation and since then, he's done one more. I think this was like a couple days ago, actually. He did one more interview.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, so now, I mean, it's sort of the same, but he's saying that since that initial interview, he's being threatened. Okay. So there have been threats. There have been, knocks on the door, nobody there. He does have this kind of feeling of being watched. And he says that the main reason why this is such a big deal, why they want to keep this like as under wraps as possible, is because with this tech, if they successfully reverse engineer it, which, there's speculation still on if they've successfully done it or if they're still kind of working on it and they haven't figured it out. If they do successfully do it, our reliance on oil is done.
Right.
So that changes the entire dynamic of the world. Like the elites are done. Like the whole structure of just our dependence on foreign oil, like all wars done. You know what I mean? Like, so this is huge. If we successfully do that and like there's just no need for oil anymore, it's a total shift that I think the elites and the super powerful people are not ready for. They don't want to give it up.
Right, because these craft run on basically 0-point gravity.
Right.
And
anti-gravitational technology. So they basically like, I'm not going to pretend like I understand it at all, but it's basically like, yes, they are bending time and space around them. So they're like not really moving. It's like matter is moving around them. Like that's how they travel. So they're able to travel the same way in the air as they are in the water. So that's why you see them, in the water and coming in and out of the water and in the air, like so easily, so fluidly. It's crazy.
So we wouldn't need gas.
We wouldn't need
We
gas.
wouldn't need oil. We wouldn't need windmills.
No, none
we
of it.
wouldn't need solar panels.
No.
If we had just had this one technology that the military has.
Right, that we have and we may or may not have figured out, So, and it's also a race because we're not the only country that obviously has this problem. Like other countries have their own programs as well, according to Grusch. So China does, Russia does. Apparently China has made some breakthroughs. I don't know what his source is on that. Maybe some insider that works on the program. Yeah, has made breakthroughs on the tech and reverse engineering and figuring it out. So, it is a race in that way too. Whoever does figure this out is going to be king of the world. You know what I mean? Like that's it.
Do you think that the aliens are? Do you think that this is like the aliens' way of watching a Survivor reality show unfold for us. Like, they're like, we're just going to give each continent one clue, and then
one little taste,
one little
see what
clue
they do.
each, see if they find it, see what they do with it. And it's just their fun sort of Monopoly game that they're playing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that is one of the theories that, it's just basically like Earth is a giant, like, petting zoo, like, observational kind of like petri dish that the aliens are observing, and they're kind of like, playing God with, right?
Like cute little guinea pigs.
Yeah, so that's for sure a possibility. I mean, there's many theories as to what's actually going on here. I don't know if you want to get into that, or if you want to talk about Grusch more.
Let's talk about Grusch a little bit more, just because there's, I'm sure we've heard a lot about it already at this point, but there's always just so much more coming out, like his credibility, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
And how more and more people, like, did you see Mark Rubio?
Yeah.
Recently? Well, I didn't.
Little Marco.
I don't really like the guy.
No.
And this is what's interesting that I'm noticing is that it's bipartisan, right? This
yeah.
is,
it's the great uniter.
it is. And that's what has always been, was that quote, like the one way to unite man and continents is to have one greater sort of enemy.
Right, a common
enemy. And this is sort of it. So the interesting thing is I'm noticing in myself listening to, different people who I normally would gag at.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, okay, shoot, I have to actually
listen
to Mark Rubio talk about aliens, because it's not polarized yet.
Right.
Yet.
I'm sure we'll find a way. I'm sure there's going to be, people are going to be like racist against the aliens, or like there's definitely going to be just some kind of divide
eventually. Like sure.
It's so I'm enjoying this sweet spot where like both sides can kind of entertain it equally.
Like when COVID started.
Yeah, right.
Everyone was
everybody
banding
was on board
together. Like, we're in this together. We're gonna get through this, and then it all shit hit the fan.
Basically, yeah.
Here we are.
No cursing.
So what else about Grusch? He's only done one other interview, so he's only done 2 interviews so far. And the first one he did was June 20th. Around June 20th,
recent,
June 22nd.
a couple of weeks ago.
Which I think is interesting, because to bring in the astrology a little bit, Pluto went retrograde on June 6th, I believe.
Okay.
And then when Pluto went retrograde, let's see, the June 20th, June 11th is when Pluto went back into Capricorn. And when that's the whole like shit getting turned up from below the surface of the United States power structure, and how the United States is using its power to manipulate the dollar, first and foremost, but also the Pluto and Capricorn in the second house of the United States is directly correlated with its use of oil, because Pluto equals power. What is power? It's electricity, it's oil, it's all forms of energy and power. So what I think is really fascinating about all of the UFO disclosure is that it's not just about every single aspect of our lives changing, but also for the United States, like they have a direct benefit for keeping it under wraps or not letting this information out, to control the power source.
Oh yeah.
In the literal sense. So when that comes out too, with Pluto going retrograde, is that phase where essentially all the shadows become projected out. So everything that we've been hiding, suppressing, stuffing down is slowly coming up to the surface.
Right.
So the next few months while Pluto's retrograde through the United States chart in the second house in Capricorn, we're going to see so much more stuff come up.
Wow.
It's like end times, like end days, game over for the U.S. and like all of its tricky games that they're playing.
So when you say that, though, is it more, so it's like the U.S. is like standing as a world superpower? Like, are we witnessing now like our downfall, basically like our fall of Rome, because we just can't kind of keep a lid on all of this stuff. Like it's just bubbling over too much, and the people are becoming too aware, and the people are becoming more powerful, and it's just basically going to reach a tipping point.
Yeah.
Crazy. Wow.
Basically.
Is there a time where this has happened before? Do you know?
The fall of Rome was during one of their Pluto returns.
Wow. Okay.
All of the Pluto returns throughout history for any country has resulted in some sort of revolution or uprising.
Wow. That's incredible.
Or a change in political structure. So because the Pluto is in the United States second house, which is literally money and power,
Yeah.
it's going to change the way that we exchange between each other, resources, and our relationship to money, which I've talked about so many times, but, the transition from physical financial assets to digital currency, and how the United States is currently trying to position itself in a way where it can still be the world currency, but through the digital currency. So there's like the digital global banking system, or I can't remember exact digital global DGBD is the currency that they're currently trying to implement. And yeah, you'll see a lot of movement happening with banks throughout the next few months in the financial sectors. I think like just Swiss Bank just came out, or Deutsche Bank just came out and saying that they're going to legitimize digital currency. And this just comes right, and then of course Bitcoin jumps to like 30,000. But this just comes right after them basically poo-pooing on it. And the SEC.
Right. I was going to say that. It's interesting how there was all of this talk of regulating it and basically ending it, squashing it, like all of these exchanges are going under. There's so much happening in that world that's, it seems to be a big effort to suppress it. And now it's like, wait a minute, actually we can control this, and have it basically be like how it's always been. But now there's like an illusion of like control on the people's part. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Like as a social justice act to do, to exchange your dollars into cryptocurrency.
Yes. So we'll give you that illusion of control, but don't forget who really wears the pants.
Which is one of the, the United States is what the United States, not just the United States, but after they adopted, of course, all of the Nazi scientists and propagandists, has become one of the biggest misinformation propaganda machines in the world.
Right. We're so good at it.
Which is where a lot of the black money goes to in the military and the black budget.
Right.
Which is how they've suppressed UFO information for so long.
Right. Yeah, it's been ongoing, I mean, I think once this first started kind of popping up on the government's radar, back early days, and really around like World War II is when it really started popping off, and around then was like Roswell and all of that, of course, like, that famous case. There's just, as soon as this has started is basically when we've been trying to put a lid on it, Right. And Grusch, actually, just to go back to Grusch, like he does talk about how, one of the first retrieval cases happened in Italy under Mussolini. So,
I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously during that time, everybody was on super high alert, right? Watching the skies. Is there about to be a bombing? What's happening? So Mussolini and, his government, they observed a crash and they retrieved it. They got the Vatican involved for some reason.
Okay.
I think that, it was obviously...
What do we do?
Yeah, what do we do here? I think that it was definitely a test of faith here. So the Vatican got involved, and they actually did communicate with the U.S. because they wanted to know, was this you guys? And we denied it. And this, so this kind of like unspoken agreement has been going on ever since, of like, countries kind of talking to each other, like, we need to acknowledge that, like, if there's an unidentified craft, it's an unidentified craft. Like, we can't just assume that it's, one of us and we're just like lying about it, you know? So there's been like treaties signed and stuff. Like I think during the Cold War, like Nixon signed a treaty with the USSR, you know, basically acknowledging that, yes, there are unidentified objects and we don't know where they're from, but, you know, I know it's not you and you know it's not me. So let's just, you know, kind of keep that.
That's huge, which is huge.
So incredible. Like,
which should have been maybe, well, I know for skeptics and you know, I think we are all a little skeptical. I think every single person has a certain level of skepticism in them. So it's not like who you are as a person. However, I think for a lot of us people and who have like a higher level of skepticism need tangible, physical, hard evidence for anything to be real. And that's been the hardest thing for all of this, which is, I think, a lot of the arguments against Grusch currently is like, well, where is it?
Right.
Why aren't you showing pictures? Why don't you show us a piece of material? Why don't you give us something?
Well, you know, it's interesting because oftentimes that doesn't even do it. You know, going back to the Roswell case, like there was physical evidence of a craft, you know, there was material retrieved, and it's just crazy because, you know, the government and the local paper at the time, actually, they put out an official statement calling it a downed, unidentified craft. They referred to it as that. And then literally the next day they pulled it, they yanked it and changed their story to a weather balloon. So that's where the infamous, you know, weather balloon kind of story comes from. And they totally discredited the guy who, you know, collected the materials and, you know, had pictures of it and everything. They're just like, no, like this is like a school project. Like it's clearly like, you know, rubber bands and foil and just, you know, man-made objects. Like you're a fool, you know,
obviously.
If you can't see that. Right. So, you know, even if there is hard evidence, like we are very good at, you know, keeping the illusion alive and basically confusing the situation and confusing perspectives. And, you know, especially now in this day and age, everything is digital. Nothing's tangible, right? So and especially with like AI coming, I mean, yeah, I feel like I go on like a whole tangent with this, but it's like, what is real, right? Aren't we kind of dealing with that question now, like more than ever? Like, what is real? What can we believe? Everything's online. That's like where we get all of our information, right? That's our newspaper. So we see a story, we see images, we see videos. How do we know? How do we vet that, right? So it is going to become harder and harder, I think, these days to really believe what's going on. And I don't know. I really just think what needs to happen is a craft needs to like touch down in Times Square or something with like millions of people there watching and literally like a take me to your leader kind of situation, right?
So that makes it even, I'm going to bring up a counter to this. That's going to make it even more complicated.
Go on.
Project Bluebeam.
Oh, right. Yes.
So Project Bluebeam is this notorious program that is testing holograms and projecting sound waves, audio waves, visual waves into the sky and also just into the atmosphere, but also into the human biorhythm to test and see how these waves affect people and the environment and space. And so one of the for the listeners, one of the theories is that Project Bluebeam is going to be used to project, you know, holograms of UFOs, spiritual entities, deities, as a way to harness our collective psyche and persuade our beliefs and views for the purpose of whatever government entity wants us to believe. So like, it's a really great way to rally all divided people against UFOs and aliens, for instance, because obviously we're not them or they're not us. They're the only other than, you know, the only other that we can have to collectively bring us all together to identify each other with ourselves.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point. That program, again, you know, not it's not 100% confirmed that actually exists, but I would definitely not put it past them to have a program like that and be actively testing stuff like that right now. And yeah, it makes total sense that they want us to believe a certain thing. They want us all to kind of be geared towards a certain direction, a certain belief. And they're going to do everything they can to make that a reality.
They could project a UFO landing.
Right.
Make it seem so real. And then also beam thoughts and ideas into our heads to make us think that we're being telepathically communicated with by aliens.
Yeah.
And they could say anything, right?
So that actually is interesting. That's an interesting point about the, beaming the thoughts telepathically, because there is this famous story of these kids in Zimbabwe who saw a craft and interacted with beings. So I am wondering, now if that was real or if that was possibly a Project Bluebeam test, because the kids to this day, you interview them now. It happened maybe like, I think like 30, 40 years ago. But you interview them to this day. Yes, it's clear as day. They saw a craft. It landed. They saw beings that, kind of fit the gray description. And they communicated with them but telepathically. So thoughts and ideas were put into their head. And it was basically something along the lines of like, you need to protect the earth. Like, climate change is coming. Like you need to basically get this message out there that you as a species like need to take this seriously and take better care of the earth. But yeah, again, not like spoken, nothing tangible, nothing touched, like all just in the mind, right? So that's whether or not that's real, I don't know.
Well, we have technology to do that.
Yeah.
We have technology to beam sounds into someone's brain.
Oh, for sure.
Because we also have the technology to extract images from someone's brain just from the electrical activity that's going on in someone's brain. We also have technology, which is finally just confirmed, but we've had it for a long time, technology to beam radio waves into through like concrete walls and then generate like sonar visuals of people and like the whole interior of someone's house through the walls.
Crazy.
Through the Wi-Fi.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember that hologram they had of Tupac at Coachella.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty wild.
Yeah. So the idea is that like the first full contact will be a Project Bluebeam undertaking.
Which is disappointing. That is disappointing if that's actually what is going on. And it's, just another means of like mass control, mass deception, and it's not actual contact. It's not, finding out the truth.
Which could be another PSYOP.
Yeah. PSYOP upon PSYOP. Oh, God, I am so sick of the PSYOPs. Yes, it is definitely possible that it could just all be a PSYOP.
And that's also just so boringly biblical.
Yeah.
Too, right? Like, the second coming is going to come, but first there's going to be an antichrist.
Right.
And you shouldn't believe the antichrist. Don't believe the first one. Believe the second one.
Right.
Kind of a thing. So I wonder, too, how many people who abide by that theory are also just susceptible to believing, the antichrist story.
For sure.
As well. Or it just kind of, it's been implanted into our psyche so many times that... Because I find myself pulling biblical or Christian ideology and having that as a baseline for some of my belief, like plot lines or ideas or beliefs of how things happen. And then I have to like shake myself out of it and be like, no.
Right.
That's a pre-programmed storyline. Like this one potentially could be of like, don't believe the first one. Don't believe the first coming. Believe the second coming. Yeah. The first one's going to try to trick you and imprison you and enslave you. And then the second one is the good guy.
That's the true savior.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, it's the ultimate narrative.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate human story. And I do think that shadowy figures, take advantage of that. They take advantage of our humanity and our shared, the collective unconscious, implanting what they can, knowing that it will be received in a certain way because of our stories, because of our, the Christian kind of background and, just drawing everything, all of our life lessons from that kind of ideology, right? So.
You mentioned before we got on about another leaker.
Yeah. So a few months ago,
I guess I just want to also, just in case,
go on.
Today is June 29th in 2023. Just in case anyone wants a reference point where we are in time today, right now.
Good call. Okay. Good call. So a few months ago, like April, I think, there was an anonymous poster on 4chan, which 4chan kind of has its own problems, but I don't know. I guess if you were a high-ranking government official, you had all of this knowledge, but you were too afraid to come out, but it was like eating you up. You needed to come forward with it.
You obviously would share it with the incels first.
You would 100% share it with the incels and, right alongside the hentai porn. Yes.
They're the first ones that need to know this.
Well, they're going to be the ones that save us, of course. So basically he made this whole post and did this whole Q&A on 4chan, revealing a lot of information about UFOs and these programs and stuff. And so he says that most of the UFOs are unmanned, so they're just drones that are of non-Earth origin. And there is a huge underwater facility that keeps moving around. So it's like a mobile underwater facility that is building all of these crafts. So that implies that these beings are here on Earth, and they've been here on Earth, and, that's terrifying. But yeah, so anything that gets near this facility, apparently we have tried investigating this. We've gotten close to it, and we're evaporated immediately. So it destroys anything that comes within like a certain range, which actually made me start thinking about, that Titanic sub that just imploded, that whole crazy story. I was like, oh man, did they get too close to
They just got incinerated.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
They were pretty far down. They were, I think, at 3,500 feet.
Yeah, no, it was way deeper than they should have been, for sure. The craft was not meant to be down there, but I am wondering, maybe they got too close to the sun. So this facility has been around for thousands of years. It's apparently known by every country, every kind of government is aware of this facility. And there also might be multiple, it's not just maybe one, it's multiple. But this is just really a crazy idea, because just to imply that the aliens are here on Earth and they've been here on Earth kind of changes the whole dynamic of what we know of aliens and UFOs and all this. It's I really like this theory of them kind of being also human, but they broke away. During our evolutionary process, we were, all evolving as one thing. And then, maybe as we were coming out of the water, they stayed in the water. So that's a theory. It's the breakaway civilization theory. And so they, evolved and kind of did all their thing, in the water while we're up on land, right? And that, that would make sense. That would make sense as to why they're so interested in our nukes. That is such a common occurrence with all these sightings, is they're always around, nuclear facilities and, bombs. There have been reports of them disarming bombs. Right. And so the only reason I can think of that they would be wanting to do that is because it's mutually assured destruction. Like they don't want to be destroyed. If we destroy ourselves, they're going to be destroyed. So, they have the will to live as well. So they're probably just like, hey, stop being idiots up there, stop like playing with these crazy things. And yeah. And then they've existed for so long, but yeah, again, we've only kind of been seeing them recently. And it was all around the time of, the atom bomb.
Right.
Like once that whole thing started. So
which a lot of the testing gets done in the water.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of nuclear, not nuclear, but just bombs in general get tested in the water. They just blow them up in the water. And also out here in the desert.
Yes.
But yeah, so that would make sense too if there's if this traveling sisterhood of the mega UFO the thing is moving from ocean to ocean, and it just happens to notice, they're going to do a test today. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should dislodge that.
Yeah, and so according to this guy also, he says that they make different kinds of craft. So each craft has a very unique function. So that's why you have, it's all the same, but each craft has a different purpose. So that's why, you see the V-shaped ones, you see the tic-tac ones, the classic flying, like the disc ones. So they're all kind of meant to do something.
So there's this guy I just heard about named Avi Loeb.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah, he is on medium.com. He has his blog on there where he is documenting his search for UFO remnants in the ocean. So he started this project. I believe he's from Harvard. He's a scientist. And he has been scraping the ocean this year. I think he started this year.
Crazy.
And he is finding these little balls of magnetic, metallic material.
Wow.
They're little tiny balls, about maybe half inch. And he documents all the ones they find. And he's super open and super transparent about the work that they're doing, which I think is really cool.
Is it part of any official government agency, or is it he's just doing it totally independently?
I think he's doing it totally. I mean, funding? As far as I know, I think it's independent, or maybe it's through a research program through Harvard. I'm not sure, but basically they wanted to explore one. What would they call it? Not an asteroid. I don't know what they would call it, but a comet, I think, fell into the ocean, or they saw one, an explosion. They call it IM-1, I believe. And
recently this fell into the ocean?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think in January. And so he decided to go out and check the debris of that one comet to explore and understand the makeup and material of space. But it's he's just checking things out. He also is interested in all of the UFO, the water UFOs too, the water UFO phenomenon, which I think is very fascinating. Also, to be honest though, I wasn't really interested in water UFOs back in the day when I was younger.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I didn't really know a lot about it. It wasn't, it just wasn't really kind of in the public lexicon as much as, the flying saucers, right? So
I don't know
But it's
why.
crazy and it makes way more sense that they would be in the water. I mean, we know more about the moon, right? And we know more about all the planets basically than we know about the surface of the Marianas Trench, what's going on deep down there, right? So and there's always all of these really creepy recordings that come out from, deep sea, submarines will kind of place sensors to, do some testing or whatever. And they always hear grinding, machinery sounds. And there was one famous one where it sounded like a train or something. It's really crazy. And then apparently, in the 70s, actually, we officially, the government, we sent out this mission, to place sensors on the ocean floor, to detect anomalies because we had awareness of it. And they did actually detect some unknown submersible, like sub-like object that was moving insanely fast.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we have, that's kind of
in the 70s.
In the 70s,
Huh.
yeah. So there's like record of that, you know, of course we keep under wraps. Yeah.
Could be anything. Like they would say it wasn't, like it can't move in any way, or at that time would have moved in any way that any technology would be able to.
Yeah, that was before also, you know, like we were kind of aware of like the anti-gravitational propulsion. So, you know, yeah, it moving that fast underwater just like blew our minds. You know, we have I mean, it still does, of course. I mean, we still don't see that every day. But now, you know, with everybody coming out, we have like a little bit more of an understanding of how these things can move. Yeah, scary stuff.
What do you think the next step is? Like, do you think that, well, I have so many, what do you think the next step is? And then also, do you think that there is a regulated and structured disclosure process that's happening, that's underway?
Interesting. Yeah, so the next steps, I don't think there's any like one next step. We're very sloppy, right? I mean, the government's very sloppy. Like they have tried to keep things under wraps before, like you were saying, MK Ultra, you know, like obviously that whole thing got so messy. They were so messy with that. And just many other things, you know, that have come out over the years with them. You know, they do not run that tight of a ship. Like information comes out, people are people, and people like to talk, especially about, you know, weird, crazy things that they're working on, you know? So I just think that there's going to be more and more whistleblowers that are coming out. I think that this hearing that is going to be scheduled soon is going to bring forward a lot of people kind of lurking beneath the surface because I think they feel safer, possibly. You know, there's safety in numbers, right?
David Grusch is like he's the test kitten.
Yeah.
Like push him out like, okay, no, you do it and then see what happens. You go first.
I mean, apparently he's being threatened. You know, we got to protect him at all costs. I think that, you know, he needs to declare right now that he's not suicidal.
Right.
And so, but yeah, if he survives this, then I think that is going to encourage a lot more people to come out. And then we're just going to get, you know, maybe a clearer picture of what is going on. I mean, people are speculating that there's going to be full disclosure in 2027. So I don't know if you know anything astrologically about what's going on that year, but there's certain reasons behind that date, or that year, rather. NASA has said that there's an asteroid that's going to apparently hit us. It's not going to be like devastating apparently, but there is like, that is projected that in 2027 there's going to be an asteroid. Apparently there is a space lab that is under construction right now by Lockheed Martin. You know, those old guys. So that's apparently going to replace the ISS in 2027. And then also that is possibly when like AI is going to be like fully integrated into everyday life. So yeah, 2027 just apparently is a big year. You know, a few like people in the community have been kind of speculating that that's when we're going to get all of the information.
Okay.
So,
well, it seems like we're already kind of getting it.
Yeah, we are. We're getting trickles. We are getting trickles. But yeah, as far as like, you know, like Biden or like, you know, just
like it just being super normal.
Right. Making like a State of the Union address of like my fellow Americans, like, yes, an like aliens which is are always, here.
It's always like 10 years later and we're like, okay, Grandpa, we know. Like,
we've been with that.
We've done that. We've been talking about this for decades. So
Thanks
it's
for
like
catching up.
Right. Like, did you know did you can send an email? Like, we're okay, thank you. Let's move on. What else?
I mean, he won't be alive probably in 2027.
No,
so,
he won't make it. It's fine.
Fine.
So have you, speaking of timelines, I just watched this Elizabeth April video which is this channeler who actually lives out here in the desert. However, I don't know if she still does anymore, but it was kind of a little like
Cool.
whispers when she moved here. Like, did you hear?
Oh, amazing.
Elizabeth April lives here. So Elizabeth April is this kind of, I guess, famous within the community channeler who shares information from alien beings that give messages to humanity. And she was talking about a timeline, and her whole thing is that she doesn't read the news. She's totally disconnected. She doesn't watch other channelers or anything. She just totally focuses on the messages that she gets or shares those. So, that's what she says. But apparently she's got timelines that sort of sync up with all these other people too that are channeling messages. And she was saying that by 2030, it'll be widely accepted. Like, we're all going to accept it. It's, we get, there's no question. There might be a small group of people who, are the deniers, but, there's always those
always in opposition
who don't want to believe. They just don't want to get on the train.
Yeah.
And then by 2050, it will be full alien-human integration on Earth.
2050. Oh, my goodness. That is insane to think about.
It's not that far away.
No, it isn't.
It's almost 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, I have a 10-month-old baby, and so when
She'll
she's
be
like an
25.
adult, it's just like, this is my alien boyfriend.
That'll be a part of her Saturn return. Everyone's Saturn return by then is going to be like, do I stay with this alien hybrid boyfriend or do we get married? I don't know. Our genes don't really fit because obviously like his genetic code is from Uranus or whatever. And mine's from Earth. So we're not sure. It's a big risk.
Oh, God, the children. Oh, the children. The hybrids. Yeah.
Save the children.
I can't wait. That's really cool.
But that's what she says, and that it's okay. And
so they're friendly. She's saying they're friendly.
She's saying they're friendly. She's got like a really positive message about it.
That's good because that's Grusch is saying that they're not so friendly. They're not like. But
he's from the military.
He is. So I mean, he's on high alert.
You got to think of like who is the one whose perspective are we getting the story from?
Right.
Like, do you think that aliens would be friendly with the military, Yeah. Or do you think they'd be more friendly with like a gentle soul from the desert?
That's a great point. Yeah.
Living their life and praising the alien gods.
Making contact in like a very respectful and, gentle way. Yeah, like you said.
Right.
Like I think that definitely makes a huge difference. Yeah. So I mean, but Grusch does say that, he has reports of beings murdering humans. So I don't know why.
That's big.
Yeah. I don't know if it was, they were like provoked, if it was like military personnel, if it was just, regular citizens.
Intention is key here.
Yes, intention is very key. But just according to him, they are capable of murder.
I'm sure they're capable. Well, they're also capable of implanting and inseminating their hybrid babies into us.
That is true.
So I think that they do that because they have lost all ability to reproduce. Well, the Greys.
Yeah.
And because they've genetically modified themselves to the point where they're basically just skin suits, like they're just AI robot bodies.
Yeah.
And which cannot produce. And now they're effed.
Yeah.
So they need
they're
us.
Maybe traveling like to various planets, to kind of repopulate themselves. I mean, that's like the panspermia theory. That's like why we exist, because we are actually an alien race that was dying out. And so our last, effort was to eject all of our like genetic and DNA material into space, and then it just landed, on Earth. And then that's why we are what we are.
That is the only thing that makes sense to me, because I'm allergic to everything. I can't eat half the food here.
Yeah.
It's toxic. I mean, it's
yeah.
toxic, period. But also,
It is.
you'd think that, I don't know. It just seems, why do we get tumors? Like, why do we get
Yeah.
growths out of nowhere? Why do people
Well-
get like deformities from just existing? But
Yeah.
allergies is the big one
Yeah.
to me. Like when our immune systems don't seem to function well
Yeah.
here. Like everything seems to irritate it.
Yeah, that's true. That's an interesting point. Because you would think that other worldly beings, wouldn't be able. They don't have the same makeup as us, so they wouldn't be able to exist in the same climates. But I think a lot of that, is just our own doing, our own like messing with food and not regenerating soil in an appropriate way. Just growing crop after crop after crop without like having any kind of rest period. That definitely has messed with the food quality and like the makeup of the food to the point where it's like barely food anymore.
But then that even in and of itself leads me to believe that we're aliens, because why would we even think to do that, which seems so counter to the well-being of our bodies?
Greed. Yeah.
That just seems so dumb. Like all the other animals out here are eating the seeds, eating the things that they need to eat.
Whatever they find, right?
Whatever they find, they're fine. They're good. They're, besides whatever shit humans are doing to them. Yeah. They're living peacefully on their own. They don't need to genetically modify their flowers to produce, like they're good. So that just like, even, I guess that's the reptilian part to me, that seems so unnatural on this earth. That's like the greed and the hunger for more and the need for abundance at all cost. To me, just seems unnatural to this earth.
It's true. It is true. And I don't think that that's how most people operate, I mean, that's kind of...
It's a breed. It's an alien breed. It's a reptilian
type of person,
alien breed.
Yes, that may or may not be part of the Illuminati lizard person.
Have you seen, I don't know, there's like we have tails, like our tailbone. And like some people's tailbones
is still there.
Is still like longer than others.
Yeah. Well, I've seen there's been, all the like big guys like, Rockefeller, JP Morgan, like, all the big bankers and like historical figures that have kind of like shaped reality as we know it, right? They all have weird heads. Like they all have like kind of like a flat spot in the back of their head.
They were neglected.
So the logical explanation is that, yes, they were just like left as a baby to cry for hours and hours. And so their head got like misshapen from that. But they could also be not humans because their head is weird. So
I think they were just neglected, and that's why they're cold.
Yeah, that's true.
Cold-hearted.
Yeah.
Mean-spirited, non-human. Neglect will do some weird things to people.
It will possibly make you an alien, yeah.
So let's see, what else is there? What else is going on?
Yeah, I mean, another thing, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground, actually. I mean, this has been a very, like...
Vegas.
Fruitful discussion, yes. But Vegas is interesting. This was kind of the most high-profile sighting that's come about, in the past, like, couple months here. So basically the story is that a family in Vegas, they were just kind of doing their thing, minding their own business, and then they noticed this huge fireball.
This is back in May.
Back in May, yes. Yeah. This huge fireball comes out of the sky, crashes, allegedly in their backyard. There was like, a craft that made an imprint in their backyard and kind of like the soil. And they saw beings. They saw two figures that were kind of like looking confused and like tramping around. They apparently tried to operate some of like the construction vehicles that were parked in the yard. And this is really interesting because it's not just them saying this. There is police body cam footage of this fireball that like came from the sky. There's Ring camera recordings of a crash. And then they recorded, it's very, very hard to see, but they recorded the beings on their like construction vehicles, like the tractors or whatever. It's very hard to see, yes. But if you do, people have like cut up these videos and zoomed in and done all kinds of like analysis on it. And yes, you can clearly see two beings that blink. And so it's pretty crazy. The family was very vocal about it. They were willing to do all these interviews. Everybody obviously was very interested in this story because there was footage, because of the police body cam footage, the police kind of corroborating this story. And now the family has gone silent. So they were set up to do all of these interviews and all of this press about it. And now they're, not answering their phones. They're not, kind of making any kind of appearance. And this, kid also who was sort of putting all of this out there initially, like he's gone quiet. And now apparently there's been reports of like, all these kind of Men in Black type figures circling the neighborhood. They've set up these towers of these camera towers right by their house. Neighbors are scared and, kind of feeling on edge there. So it is interesting, like what is going on there, because there was no craft apparently, but there was like an outline of a craft. So it's kind of speculated that like the government got there right away and like removed the craft. And then the beings kind of like stayed behind, and then eventually they came back and like got the beings too.
The story, the way they explain, so this guy, what's his name? Angel? On Hell? I forgot his name, but he has a YouTube video, or he has a YouTube channel. Yeah. That he uploaded his side of the story. Right. It's like a 7-minute long video that explains everything that happened from his perspective.
I believe him.
I do too, but you know what? I found out that the circle imprint in the backyard, they looked at Google satellite imagery from like 10 years ago, and it's there. Oh. So it's been there. Huh. And then the crash on the Ring cam, they found that was actually from a couple years ago, from something different.
Interesting.
So there's some pieces that
are we sure though? Because again,
a little
things can be maybe manipulated.
Well, okay. Here's the thing. Okay,
if this was a very serious thing, if this actually happened and the government was like right involved, like they were on it, and this was like clear as day crash. Alien encounter, they're going to do everything they can to stifle that.
Here's the thing. This happened in May. The Grusch thing happened June, I think 20th. This
around that time
story came out literally like 4 days later and took over essentially the news media. And there's a few things that seem maybe, curious as to whether or not it was real or planted, or maybe they just got hyped and
as a distraction from Grusch, you're saying.
Yeah, like the circle on the ground, and then also the Ring cam. Like perhaps they just got wrapped up in the excitement of the experience that they had, which was real. However, the things that are interesting is that, like you said, so the the Vegas Police Department came out and installed that camera on the roof of the family's house. They were silent, hushed ever since the news came out. But what a lot of people don't realize is that kid did another sort of interview with this guy named Doug Papa. Doug, Poppa. He has a podcast on YouTube, and when he first heard about this back in May, went there to interview the family.
Oh, wow.
And all the way back in May, so you'll watch him approach the kid and then say, hey, can I interview you? I heard all this stuff that happened. And he's like, okay, hold on. And he gets on the phone and he calls somebody, the kid does, and then puts him on speakerphone. And it's a woman. And she's saying, okay, can you get the journalist's plate numbers for me? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he reads off the plate numbers. And she's like, okay, like he's like, basically it turned out it was an agent. Like they confirm it was an agent.
Who was the agent?
The woman on the phone.
Oh.
So the kid called the woman on an agent way back then, like
Whoa.
way back in May. So I think that whoever Secret Service was already
On it. Yes.
Since back then.
Right.
And observing, watching. So that means that they let this information come out
To distract. Yeah.
in June. Even though it had happened in May, they already knew about it.
Right.
And they were observing and also watching the family back then.
Yeah. Why was that allowed? Why was that
Right.
allowed to come out? That's really interesting. And yeah, again, back to like the whole thing about it, on Google Earth, it's like it was already there, like the ring. They can manipulate data so easily. All they have to do is just punch in some numbers. Like, I don't, you don't know. That's part of it. That's part of, going back to just like everything being online and us getting all of our information. It's like, you got to kind of take everything with a grain of salt, a healthy level of skepticism with everything. So, but I do feel like the family, just based on their behavior, based on the information, it's very interesting. It's very scary.
Yeah. So the family's gone.
Yeah.
We don't know where they are. They've kind of disappeared. They're in hiding.
So it's either they are gone by their own accord or they've been disappeared.
Which is
so
really
to speak.
What's so compelling is that it's not just one person so he called the police and he's like, I know this is going to sound crazy, but there's non-human beings in our backyard right now.
Yeah, they're like 8 feet tall. And he was like apparently looking right at them as he was on the phone. It's like, oh yeah, they're still there. And they're really tall and
it's not just him though, it's the whole family.
Right.
The whole family. And then there's a video of them going into the backyard trying to record these beings. And something happens. I think they see something and they all freak out at the same time together.
You can't coordinate that.
And then run out of the yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you're going to get grandma on board with that. You know what I mean? It's like, no.
No way.
It's not this like family effort to, come up with this whole like elaborate ruse. Like, why? I mean, unless they're paid actors.
Well, I think that they, the government, Secret Service, whoever, whatever, media, just compiles all of these stories.
Yeah. And
then releases them at times that are
whenever
convenient.
they want. Yeah.
For them. And,
I mean, there's obviously a thing that the government does, to kind of keep us in a state of constant tension, right? I do think that that's beneficial for the powers that be to have the masses be sort of always like on the edge of their seat, right? So it's not like you're not getting full disclosure. You're getting little trickles. Like you're getting kind of like bits and pieces of information. You're coming up with your own conclusions about things so that you kind of remain in like a perpetual state of just not being sure, right? So I don't know what the goal is with that. But they've obviously done that with other things as well. I think that is, definitely a goal of theirs.
So I just saw the new Wes Anderson movie.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Asteroid City.
I really want to see it.
It's incredible.
Yeah?
But
I hear it's like his most Wes Anderson movie to date. Like it is like almost like a parody of Wes Anderson.
If that movie is not a psyop, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay. All right.
Ever. Because first of all, it's inspired, the scenery is inspired by a place out here called Amboy.
Right.
In the desert, in the Mojave Desert. It's very obvious. That's not a secret. Like the set design, the aesthetics, everything, even the little cabins that are out there.
For sure.
Is a part of the design. And it's, and also the crater. So the Amboy crater is created by a volcano in the Mojave Desert. But in the movie, there's a crater that was made by an asteroid. So then in the story, they built this city around this asteroid. It's kind of like a tourist place, kind of a very similar to Amboy and Roy's gas station, which is where this is inspired by, where it's kind of a old time rundown place. It's very dreamy and romantic. It's in the middle of nowhere, but there's like all the most famous people you can imagine are in it, and they all have the tiniest roles, and it's very Wes Anderson. But also, I just am wondering, like, why would you have so many? Tom Hanks, is in there.
Yeah.
Tilda Swinton,
Scarlett
Johansson,
yeah.
like all the most famous people to date. And for this movie that I believe is a straight psyop, I'm not going to reveal anything, but if you watch it, you're going to be like,
I'm going to keep that in mind.
WTF. Why now? Just why now? So all of these movies that keep coming out that are like
predictive programming.
Yeah,
that's been a thing.
100%. And then, of course, he has access to all of the most famous people who would love to be in his movie that can help promote and generate more excitement and like get people who maybe wouldn't normally watch his movies to watch it. Because Tom Hanks has never been in a Wes Anderson movie, I don't think. So, no. But he definitely has a connection to a certain genre, of people and a certain populace that would watch it just because Tom Hanks is in it. Yeah. So it just leads me to think that it's just all been set up. We're all just getting set up. We're all getting played.
Interesting. Yeah, that kind of makes me think of that movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yes,
Steven
but
Spielberg.
I forget everything. What is the synopsis?
It's like just a regular kind of alien movie. It's like,
right, I remember.
Like they make contact. Aliens come and it's like the whole like do 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 like that. Like, song that's
I remember.
So it's really interesting though because apparently he worked with very high level, people in government that were kind of aware of UFOs and aliens and like the whole thing, and they kind of like gave him a little bit of information to put into the movie. So there's a few things in the movie that Bob Lazar talks about as well. So like certain like clearance codes that were present in the movie. Bob Lazar was like, yeah, like we actually did that. Like the kind of hand scanner thing to get into like the secret areas, that was exactly the same in the movie. Just like
he did draw that. What is the movie that Bob Lazar did with
with Jeremy Corbell?
Yeah,
I think it was called Dreamland.
Okay,
yeah, so that was kind of like his whole story.
Where all that is that. Let me see.
Yeah, you can, that's where he sort of just describes his whole life and how he like started working for these agencies and just what he saw. And he has, drawings of all the crafts that he apparently worked on. He saw actual beings that they had captured. And we're kind of experimenting with. So he has like definitely like a lot of information about that. So Dreamland is definitely the film to see.
Well, what else? Oh, Stephen Greer has a new movie out.
Oh yeah, tell me about that because I have mixed feelings about Stephen Greer. I like him. I like what he's doing. The more the merrier in terms of like people talking about all this and like trying to get people on board. I just get a little weirded out when there's such a money making aspect to it. I think he charges like an insane amount of money like for his like CE5 meetups and stuff like that, which is very, very interesting. I definitely believe that there's, stuff going on with that, and contact, is made, but it's also, I don't know, it just seems like the profit motive of it, maybe, I don't think anyone is immune to greed and kind of exploiting that a little bit.
Sure.
That's all I'll say. That's all.
The new documentary that he has out called The Lost Century is all about the need to disclose, zero point energy that the United States government has and other governments have in order to help humanity propel into the future. And to your point, you are like, he does the whole intro of these are all the things that are horrible that's happening with the earth and all of these species that are going extinct and all the horrendous things that oil industry is doing. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like they are garbage. Like, yeah, we should fight against that. And then he talks about, but there's a new way to exist and we can change the future. And then there's a little drop in and you can support this project that we're doing, which is to research the 0 point gravity mechanisms for power. And I was like, oh, okay.
Everyone's got a grift, it's fine. Like everyone, a grift isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you got to respect the hustle.
I do respect the hustle, but it's only so short. It's like such a minor little thing and it wasn't too much. And then he went into, and then the rest of the movie, I'd say 75% of it is like disclosure stuff, which is really interesting.
Yeah. No, he's very good at that. Like I like him for that. Like he's very knowledgeable and he, does have a lot of information about all of that, and he's hell-bent on getting it out there, so I definitely support that.
But I think that's a really interesting angle that I'm seeing is it's a very practical angle too, whereas, if the military is hiding this technology from the citizens who could be benefiting from this technology and advancing humanity exponentially and getting so many people, rising so many people out of poverty conditions, just elevating the way of life and livelihood that we have without the need to fight for survival, which the basic necessities are not just food and water at this point, it's also shelter and energy. And if we can eliminate one of those things and just have that be accessible to all people, then that's doing a massive disservice to the functions of what the purpose of it all is, which is, finding a way to survive. We've done that. We've already figured it out. We can survive fine. We don't need to survive anymore. We're past that. So it's massively unfair and unequitable to reserve such a powerful technology that will help take so many people out of just conditions,
poverty,
where they don't need to be.
That would require, though, a complete flipping on its head of society and the structure of everything, and the elites do not want to give that up.
And I think that whole point is a really great practical discourse to latch on to when talking about disclosure, because that seems to be one of the most practical aspects of it or tangible aspects of it. Of no, this is inhumane at this point.
Right.
It's not even about, having secrets and keeping secrets. No, it's beyond just keeping secrets. You're literally holding back a whole century of advancement that we could be making.
Yeah. No, can you even imagine just just on a basic level, getting people out of poverty and all that wonderful, beautiful stuff, but also just oh my God, can you imagine just being able to go from one end of the country to the other end of the country in a second? That would just be so great.
Airplanes. We wouldn't have to wouldn't spend so much money on airplanes, energy, and we're in this place right now. We live in California, and the energy bills like just jumped so high in January. Like not just here, but in Arizona and all the other states.
The people would benefit. So that's the big issue is the people would benefit, but then the elite few that control everything would not benefit. You know, where would they make their money? So
right. But apparently it's a free market. And apparently in a free market,
sure,
there's innovation and
that's interesting
competition.
Too, because part of the Bob Lazar lore, you know, he was actually famous before he kind of went to, you know, started working for Area 51. Like he actually was noticed because he built like a hydrogen powered rocket car. And he would like drive it to work. Like it was fully functional. And it was just totally on water. It was like a very like successful kind of invention that he made. And he talks about how that was like destroyed. Like his work was destroyed and he was like, you know, kind of approached by people like saying like, you better shut this down. Like this is not going anywhere here. Like, you know.
I think that's going to be the big reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is going to piggyback. I think the UFO disclosure is going to like piggyback off of that, of like the withholding of our ability to generate like free energy, basically, and that the government's been using it for themselves this whole time. I think that's going to be the big kind of reveal. And oh, by the way, we found out this how to have free energy by reverse engineering UFOs.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's like, oh, okay, now we have to talk about this.
Yeah.
Do you think that there are alien hybrids among us?
Currently.
Yeah. And are you one of them?
I have questioned myself sometimes. You know, looking in the mirror, I'll see like a little morph of my eye where it suddenly turns like lizardy, and I'm like, whoa.
No way.
Not yet. I don't know. I mean, it's fun to think about for sure. And there is obviously speculation. It's just, look, I mean, there are hybrids, like there are animal hybrids currently, you know, like we breed animals together that like should not be bred. And like, I don't know, something crazy like, I don't know if I talked to you about this. It was like a sheep that was like bred with a spider or something somehow. It was like spider DNA implanted in a sheep. And it was like,
that poor being.
We do that. Like we experiment with that currently. So it would make sense that if we have these creatures, you know, from another world or from our own world that have, you know, been here already, like that we would try to see what happens, you know, some kind of like messed up, like just experiment.
Do you think that Jesus was the first alien hybrid?
I
do, personally.
I do. Because look, he was very influential, obviously.
Main influencer.
Yeah, the number one. And
most followers.
Yeah, I think that he clearly was chosen for whatever reason, you know, maybe not necessarily by like a god-like figure, but he had a message to share and he was, you know, propped up for some reason. So whether or not that was like by aliens, you know, is the question.
Mary was implanted. She was impregnated.
Yeah.
By an invisible force.
Yeah.
She didn't, her and Joe,
the
John.
Immaculate Conception.
John. John? Who's Jesus' dad? What's his name?
Bob?
I think it's John.
No, I don't think it's John. I think it's, I don't know.
Oh, well, he doesn't matter anyway. Because Mary is the most important carrier of the hybrid seed.
Yes.
So she was impregnated by an invisible force. and thus Jesus, who could walk on water and levitate and make miracles happen.
Yeah. Oh, he had the anti-gravitational technology under his feet.
Yeah, this whole time.
Yeah. Well, there are, it's interesting. I don't know like too much about that. There is like a whole section like of lore like around this where it is like, yeah, talking about Jesus as an alien and like all of these examples. I haven't looked like too much into that, but I have seen like there's classic art that does depict like almost UFO like drawings and beings, like, alien beings, kind of incorporated into pictures of the Immaculate Conception, of Jesus, ancient. Like, I'm talking like, 1300s, like, 1500s, 1600s, like all of those old paintings. Like, there are some kind of illusions. Like, there's one famous one where it's, it's his birth. It's like the classic nativity scene, right? And there's like a light in the sky that looks like a UFO, like beaming him up.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. I'll send it to you. It's like, so that's kind of the only thing where I'm like, where are they getting that from?
Right.
Like, who is telling them to do that? And there's just like, why are there UFOs like in ancient art? Like, where are they seeing that? I mean, it's just been...
They've been around forever.
Yeah, they've been around forever. It's just always been a thing. And like, are they us? Are they not? Well,
have you seen Battlestar Galactica?
I don't think so. No.
Well, basically, whatever. I don't want to say anything because I can't ruin the end.
No, I don't care. I mean, it's an old movie, right?
Well, what's it called? Warning.
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert. In Battlestar Galactica, they're on the spaceship for 6 seasons, and like,
oh, it's a show, right? Yeah.
Fighting other foreign entities in space and blah blah blah, all that stuff. And then at the very end, they go back to Earth, and there's all this talk about like Earth and the history and what happened, and like this big, humans kind of destroyed the planet and blah blah blah, and like there's some people left but we don't know, and then they left the Earth and they live on this big ship and have been there forever, and then they go back and it's like modern times. They're like, oh my god.
Ooh.
So
that's crazy.
And so I always think about that and feel as though like Atlantis, right, was a really advanced civilization that either had to go underground or in space or underwater in order to survive. And those are like the old humans.
Yeah.
Possibly.
That's us. So yeah, that's
a different race.
That's definitely a theory, is that we did advance. We reached like the absolute pinnacle of evolution, right? And then something happened. We either destroyed ourselves, like hubris got in the way, or like, some force came and viewed us as a threat, So then, we were kind of forced to restart almost, right? So that's like, there's an interesting, we can talk a little bit about, I don't know, are you familiar with the Kardashev scale?
I don't think so, not off the top of my head.
So that's a possible reason also, too, why disclosure might be happening soon, and why maybe like aliens are kind of becoming more and more interested in us, because they're basically this guy, Nikolai Kardashev, he was like this Russian astrophysicist, came up with this idea of like different types of civilizations and what they mean. And like, so he was like very interested in alien life, and he was kind of like looking for signs of that, and sort of came up with this whole theory. So type 0, that's where we are right now. So we use non-sustainable forms of energy right now, but we are getting closer and closer to kind of harnessing like unlimited power. And that's by, like using our own star basically to kind of create like unlimited energy. And that would make us advance to a type 1 civilization where, basically we like take the sun, we utilize all of that to like, keep the species going like indefinitely, so there's no real risk of like extinction, at least from like an energy standpoint, right? And then type 2 is we're able to control the star. So this is where we get into the idea of like a Dyson sphere. It's like this object that we build around the sun that just harnesses all of the energy from it, and we can like manipulate it and control it, and kind of like that's kind of when we like reach the singularity. Also, we become sort of like more bionic because that's just more efficient, right? And then that's sort of when we become like, yes, immune to extinction, and we could turn into like a type 3 civilization where we travel the universe and we collect more energy from other stars.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and then so he only goes that far, but there is speculation of like a type 4 civilization where we harness the energy of the entire universe.
Oh, gosh.
And we destroy anything that we consider inferior because it's just like a waste of energy. Like all the energy that we could be using for ourselves, like we would just destroy like anything that's trying to get in the way of that. So
that's so narcissistic.
I know, but that is a theory as
so
to why,
sociopathic.
like it is, it's insane. But that could be, a species that is visiting us is maybe on the scale in some way, and yes, trying to kind of see what our energy like output and harnessing capabilities are to determine if we are a threat or not. And right now we're not, but we could be very soon. It's the way we're going, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little freaky.
Do you think that the Space Force program
Trump's
that Trump, because Trump was into aliens, like he was into disclosure.
He was like the first like real disclosure
Yeah.
guy. Yeah.
He was like, I'm gonna, let's.
I mean, he knows. Like,
blow
think
the
about
lid.
that. He does know. He has information that he's like,
so scary.
he could, I don't know. Yeah. On Truth Social, just like,
Oh my God.
just truth it out.
But he set up the Space Force, and I always kind of think about how, I don't know, we've been into this realm for so long, right? Since the X-Files, 90s, little 9-year-old Evelyn watching History Channel about, even back then they were talking about UFO sightings and anomalies and showing those videos.
Definitely, yeah.
Of Air Force people seeing, like, locking in on UFOs and stuff. And I remember, so of course it's been in my mind, like, okay, it's kind of a fun idea. But it gets more and more real as time goes on. And I remember, I think it was in 2015 or 2016 when that CIA agent was on his deathbed, and he wrote a letter that said that UFOs are real, aliens are real, they've been here, the U.S. government has been talking with the aliens, and the only reason why I'm saying all this is because I'm on my deathbed right now, and it's not going to affect me.
It doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I remember
And what was really fascinating to me, because I'm obviously like, a little schizophrenic in terms of like finding all of these connections and things like, oh my God. And this was also the last season of X-Files that came out, which is the X. It was the last season, and the last season had a lot of also like CIA
disclosure
drops
stuff,
in there as well. So I was just putting all these together. I was like, oh my God, it's gonna happen soon. Like, it's gonna happen at some point. But of course, it's like almost 10 years later.
Yeah.
Slowly and painfully, it's trickling out.
But in the grand scheme, once it is finally revealed, and if that, what's her name? Elizabeth Olsen?
Elizabeth April.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
Imagine.
If that is correct, where like, it's gonna feel like this has just always been the case, like once we do start integrating with them, and if that is true, where it's just like, like you just know it, and it's like whatever. It's like, imagine like a time before like the iPhone, you know what I mean? Can you imagine life like without it right now, like without a smartphone, without like being completely like plugged in at all times? It's like there was a time before that, and there was probably like,
sounds amazing,
people working on it for years, and like not knowing like the extent of like what it's going to look like once we are all like plugged in, like indefinitely, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just, it is taking a long time, but I just do think like once it finally happens, it's just going to be like, yeah, this is just reality now, you know?
Last thing I want to dive into is the Vatican and its connection with all of this, and also possibly too what this could mean in terms of our belief system.
Yeah.
When it comes out. But the Vatican has like their own. They have their own telescope.
They do.
They have been watching UFOs themselves. Don't they also have some sort of a program that like observes anomalies or UFOs?
Yes. Yeah, they do. And they, they're very interested in this because I think that, you know, like I said before, they were involved in the retrieval process during Mussolini's time. So this would change fundamentally everything, you know, about religion as we know it. Obviously, if aliens are proven to be real, I think I do remember the Pope saying something like, where it's like, I think somebody asked him, like, well, what are you going to do? Like, if disclosure happens and like, yeah, like aliens are kind of revealed. And he's like, well, God created aliens too, you know? So it's still, they're kind of still in that like a little bit narcissistic mindset of like, so what, the Pope is going to be the Pope of the aliens?
Right.
You know what I mean? Is there an alien Pope? Like,
how are you going to like govern their spiritual beliefs?
Exactly. So I think there's a little bit of, you know, denial on their part, you know, and kind of a clinging desperately to their position as like the leading like spiritual force here. And they want to be on top of it, you know, and possibly control. I'm sure they have a hand a little bit in like what information gets out there and what doesn't. You know, they're in direct contact with governments and everything too. I mean, it's the Vatican, of course. Yeah. So, but I mean, they've clearly known about it, and kind of going back to like that ancient art thing too. A lot of like very spiritual portraits and paintings have like depictions of UFOs and aliens. So they've always known.
Well, I wonder how much of it they'll try to spin in a religious context.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder.
I think the whole thing.
They'll probably say it's the Antichrist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it probably will. They'll probably just, because that's their only worldview. So the only way that if you have a very ingrained worldview, it's almost impossible for you to explain to yourself or understand or conceptualize anything that's like outside of that perspective. So
it's also it's ego,
just try to fit anything that happens into the stories that they already have implanted into their minds. So it's like, oh, this is the angel of death coming. You know, they'll try to put words like Christian terminology, I think, on these beings and things like that, and then try to explain it or spin it that way.
Yeah.
But that's like it's so tricky because that is very egotistical, because then you're essentially leading a lot of people astray that way.
But then again, you know, if Jesus was an alien, and it's like, that's what it's all based on, you know? So it's like, what came first, right? So aliens came first and informed the whole like religious everything, right? It's like, or religion came first and then aliens are now like integrated into it somehow, right? So that's kind of like a spin on it too. It's like, well, maybe the aliens are responsible for religion as we know it. Like that's all, you know, kind of how they say, like, I mean, a majority of religions, I think, came from like psychedelic experiences, right? Which could be aliens too. I mean, they say psychedelic mushrooms are aliens, are spores of, you know, just interdimensional like windows. And like, yeah, I mean, that could be the case where that one kind of informs the other, right? So,
yeah, it's going to be so tricky. It's going to be really hard to know what to believe.
It is. I think just the advice is just keep an open mind. And I don't think that anybody should be like too much on one train. You know,
right?
Keep a skeptical mind. You know, don't be like, just don't hedge your bets on one thing.
Yeah,
you know,
like trust
do a lot
your
of
gut.
research. Yeah,
unless you have SIBO, then don't.
Wait, what?
You can't trust your gut if it's if it's got an overgrowth of bacteria.
Yes.
Your little bacterias are going to be sending mixed messages to your brain.
Maybe your little bacteria is aliens. I don't know. Controlling you.
But I guess trust your instincts.
Yeah.
Just really trust how you feel
Trust
about
your
it.
intuition. I think, listening to channelers
Yeah.
is a good idea.
I would
'cause
say
like you
that
said,
if it ends up being anything like my dreams,
yeah. Which are reality.
it's going to be terrifying.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No. I don't know. I'm trying to stay neutral about like their temperament, like I don't want to believe either way that they're going to be like totally deadly, like killing us all. And like, I don't want to believe that they're totally like benevolent either,
No.
somewhere in the middle.
The crop circles that we've have now seem to be just more informative than anything.
Yeah.
I've never seen any like threats.
Right.
I feel like if they wanted to threaten us with crop circles, they could put messages in there.
True.
That was like, best leave this town now,
This town ain't
or
big enough
else.
for the two of us. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could point to all of the abduction stories though, and some of those are nice and some of them are not so
Terrifying.
nice. So, but I mean, you got to break a few eggs, right? So.
Well, I guess we've pretty much solved all of the world's problems when it comes to aliens
the
and
government
UFOs.
owes us a lot, and I think that
Oh, yeah.
they should hire us to
100%.
be the ambassadors to the aliens. I think
Yes.
that I'm ready for that.
We clearly have our heads on straight.
Yes.
And are able to form complete sentences. So we've got that going for us.
Yeah.
Which, that's the one last key thing that I've been thinking lately is they do owe us a massive apology. There are a lot of people that had their lives ruined, their credibility ruined, killed, murdered, stuffed, and rejected and shamed, all in the name of keeping this huge secret against us and using it as a massive disinformation campaign, which Grusch calls it. And I think that we deserve an apology.
Yeah, we're never going to get one. That is a joke. There will be no acknowledgement of that.
I'll hold my breath.
That would be great, but that would require accountability, and that is just not something that the U.S. government ever seems capable of doing. So,
well, on that note, any final thoughts or words or prayers?
Live long and prosper, dudettes, alien dudes.
And the podcast that you had done that you were doing with Talia for a while, the Take Me to Your Dealer, is still on Spotify.
Yeah, it's not on Apple Podcasts anymore, but it's on YouTube. So just Take Me to Your Dealer. We also have a Patreon too, which is sort of not active lately, but it could be.
You had a baby.
I had a baby. Listen, okay, we drank a lot while we were doing this podcast, so I had to take a little hiatus while I was pregnant with my alien child.
Responsible mother,
somewhat. Yeah. So, she's actually a hybrid. I don't know if I told you that, but she's part alien.
Yeah.
So
I saw her eyelids shift.
Yeah.
Once.
I was hoping you would notice that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast with me. It's been a long time coming.
Yes,
we've talked about this for a long time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This has been a blast.
And enjoy all the disclosure.
Oh boy, I'll be sitting with my popcorn.
We'll probably be sitting there together.
Yep, naked.
Did I say we're friends? We're
just friends.
Just friends, though. All right, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your day, week, night, what have you. You can listen to this podcast wherever you're listening to it on, and also Spotify and Apple. And then you can watch my videos on YouTube that I've been doing with Ashlyn Kristoff of the Muse House Retreat with monthly astrology forecasts and other topics that are interesting to me. And you'll continue to hear my voice and other guests' voice on topics that I like to talk about that may or may not involve astrology or hypnosis, but is in the realms of subconscious, mind, paranormal, I don't know, government stuff, and we'll keep it going. All right, everyone. See you next time.